Okay, I restarted this video. It was going a little faster than I anticipated, and I realized I picked the wrong length. And then also TikTok, not sure why we just start music in people's ears as they're recording videos. That's really weird. Please stop. So this came up on my Twitter feed last night. Since I was talking a lot about the tariffs and the trade wars, and since I get a lot of conversation based off of that, I thought, why not continue the discussion? And I did specifically mention the digital services tax, and so I thought I would throw that out there. Okay, so essentially the title, this is a CP24 article, and at the bottom it says by Reuters, so I guess Reuters wrote it, and it's just being republished on CP24. Not sure. But anyway, the title says, Canada rescinds digital service tax in a bid to advance stalled U.S. trade talks. So, let's get out of the way. Ooh, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I am going to get my handy dandy phone, since I'm recording on my iPad right now, and let me grab the article over here. And I might change the background so you guys can see the videos, but see the text on the videos, but, or you know what? I'm debating what I should do. Okay, so I'm gonna show you what's here so you guys can see it. It says Canada scrapped its digital services tax, targeting U.S. technology firms just hours before it was due to take effect on Monday in a bid to advance stalled trade negotiations with the U.S. I'm gonna pause this and I'm gonna get the next part of this clip. All right, so this is the next part. This is by François-Philippe Champagne. I'm just clicking his Twitter profile here. So he's apparently the Minister of Finance, and apparently he's an MP in Saint-Maurice-Champlain in Quebec. I was not aware of him as a person, but now I am, so I will follow him just to make sure I get the news. So essentially, he says Canada is engaged in complex negotiations on a new economic and security partnership with the U.S. Rescinding the DST, that's the digital services tax, will allow the negotiations to make vital progress and reinforce our work to create jobs and build prosperity for all Canadians. And over here it says, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and the U.S. President Donald Trump will resume trade negotiations in order to agree on a deal by July 21st. The Canadian Finance Ministry said in a statement. I'll look at that statement in a few minutes. All right, so the next part of this article says, thank you, Canada, for removing your digital services tax, which was intended to stifle American innovation and would have been a deal breaker for any trade with America, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick responded in a post on X. Wall Street futures hit record highs on Monday as sentiment in the markets rose amid optimism over U.S. trade negotiations with key partners, including Canada. Trump abruptly called off trade talks on Friday over Canada's digital services tax, saying it was a quote-unquote blatant attack. So we're about here in the article, guys. He reiterated his comments on Sunday, pledging to set a new tariff rate on Canadian goods within the next week, which threatened to push U.S.-Canada relations back into chaos after a period of relative calm. Trump and Carney met at a G7 summit earlier this month, with the Canadian Prime Minister saying that they had agreed to wrap up a new economic agreement within 30 days. Canada's planned digital tax was 3% of the digital services revenue a firm takes in from Canadian users above 20 million in a calendar year, and payments were to be retroactive to 2022. It would have impacted U.S. technology firms including Amazon.com, Meta, that's Facebook, and Instagram and WhatsApp, Alphabet's Google, and Apple. I mean, if it was Alphabet's Google, then it probably included YouTube. The tax collection slated for Monday will be halted. The statement from the Canada's Finance Ministry said, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne will bring forward legislation to rescind the digital services tax. Yeah, I'm still reading what's on the page. Okay. The DST was announced in 2020 to address the fact that many large technology companies operating in Canada may not otherwise pay tax on revenues generated from Canadians, the statement said. Canada's preference has always been a multilateral agreement related to digital services taxation. Canada is the largest U.S. trading partner after Mexico and the largest buyer of U.S. exports. It bought $349.4 billion of U.S. goods last year and exported $412.7 billion to the U.S., according to U.S. Census Bureau data. Okay, so we're at the part where it's talking about the Biden administration. Hold on, let me just grab that last part of the article. All right, so reading right where my shoulder is, guys, right about this spot here, right where my shoulder covers. Okay, the Biden administration had requested trade dispute settlement consultations over the Canadian digital services tax in 2024, saying it was inconsistent with Canada's North American free trade deal obligations. Canada had escaped Trump's broad tariffs imposed in April, but faces 50% duties on steel and aluminum exports to the United States. I don't think I need to read who's reporting it. I don't think that's it. Well, it's relevant, but I just don't think I need to read that. So essentially, I just read the whole article to you. What do I feel about the whole thing? So I kind of talked about it in my video when I reacted to Trump's tariffs the last time, and his talking about shutting down trade negotiations over the digital services tax. I'm of two minds here. On the one hand, I feel like first of all, social media is a new environment for us, right? It's about the 20-year anniversary of social media platforms being a thing. I believe social media came up about 2006, and now we're in 2025, right? And so it's my personal opinion that legislation should have come out as the technology was coming out, and as these things were starting to make an impact and make money in our markets. And to be honest, Canadians should have created competitive services at the beginning in order to compete with the United States. If they wanted to tax American services coming into Canada on a digital scape, this should have been discussed during the updated USMCA agreement, or the 2.0 NAFTA agreement. That's the North American Free Trade Agreement. I feel like that should have been covered during those negotiations. The fact that it wasn't and it was still separate was not great. I think it is a measure of weakness on Carney's part for Trump to say, I don't like these digital services tax. I'm not going to negotiate with you until you get rid of it. And he goes, fine, I'll just get rid of it. Although I don't like how Canada brought forward the digital services tax, I do think there's something to be said over the fact that there are American companies running in Canada and not paying taxes. Because any foreign government any foreign company that comes and works in a nation, they have to pay taxes. Why is it that the digital services like Netflix, like YouTube, like Facebook, all these other companies, because they're internet-only companies, they're not paying taxes in countries that they work in? I don't know if I like that, but then again, because Canada did nothing for all these years, and now they're, even in the article here, it says that they want to tax them about 3% of revenue, and then taxes are to be retroactive for the last 3 years. That's unacceptable. That is unacceptable. You cannot retroactively claim taxes off of these businesses. It's one thing if you say, okay, we've seen how you've been playing for the time being, we're going to start instituting a tax. Even still, I feel like this should have been established from the get-go. This is not something that should have been established in the back end after they've been running roughshod on you for how many years. But to retroactively tax them, that to me is going a bit too far. That said, I do think that Carney decided to scrap things in order to make Trump happy is setting a precedent I don't like. And I don't think this is going to sit well. To be honest with you guys, I did not vote for Carney. I was in line at the voting booth, and I was looking at his policies. I was looking at Pierre Poilievre's policies, and I was like, I don't see much of a difference between either of the platforms. Happy to vote Liberal on the provincial level. I'm not yet at the point where I'm ready to vote Liberal on the federal level. We'll get there maybe one day. But from what I'm seeing with Carney, I don't know. But I see this concession as a bad omen, because you give Trump an inch, he will take a mile. What Canadians really should do, which we probably will not do, but what we should do is just start moving away from all American products. If we really got radical and said, look, we're just not going to use any of the services until you guys start paying a tax, and they start losing revenue, maybe they'll start to listen. But right now, we are coming from a negotiation place of weakness, and I don't see any trade negotiations being of any benefit to Canada at this point. Yeah. Elbows up.